Are you mocking my children, Maya? The words thundered through the mansion like a slap. The millionaire's voice carried venom, each syllable sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes, dark with rage, fixed on the trembling figure in the middle of the grand living room. Maya William, the Black Maid. She froze, her hands still half raised in a delicate twirl, the two little twins beside her locked in place. Their small hands were wrapped around hers, their faces flushed with silent excitement. But when their father's roar filled the air, the excitement drained, leaving only fear. The deaf twins couldn't hear his rage, but they saw it. They read it in his face, in the harsh line of his mouth, in the way his body stiffened. Their little eyes darted from their father to Maya, confusion etched across their innocent faces. I said, "Answer me." The millionaire's voice cracked like a whip. "Dancing in my living room. What are you, a clown? Or do you think mocking disabled children is some kind of entertainment?" Maya's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her throat tightened, shame crashing over her in waves she hadn't earned. "No, sir. It's not," she began, her voice trembling. "Not what?" he barked, stepping forward. "Do you take pleasure in their weakness? Is this your idea? Of a joke? Teaching them circus tricks instead of real skills?" The twins clung to her apron now, their small hands gripping tightly. Their bodies shook, not from sound but from the storm of anger radiating in the room. Maya's chest heaved. She looked down at the children, their wide, pleading eyes, then back at their father. Her heart cried to defend herself, to tell him the truth, that this dance was no mockery but a bridge, a way for them to feel the rhythm of the world. Without sound, but her voice faltered under his glare. "Sir," she whispered, "I would never mock them. They— Enough!" His palm slammed against the polished mahogany table. The sound reverberated across the chandelier-lit hall. "I gave you this job to clean, to serve, not to play ridiculous games with my children. Do you understand that?" Maya flinched. Her hands instinctively covered the twins, shielding them as if the man's fury might strike them too. The wife appeared in the doorway, her silk gown brushing the marble floor. She looked first at her husband, then at Maya, and finally at the children. Her face hardened. "What is going on here?" she asked coolly. The millionaire turned sharply. "This maid was dancing," he spat the word like poison, "with our deaf twins, as if their condition is some form of amusement." The wife's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't speak, but her silence spoke volumes. Suspicion, disapproval, cold judgment. The twins, still clinging to Maya, began to tap on her arm. Their small hands gestured in the crude sign language they had invented together. Maya's heart cracked open as she read their desperate message, "Don't let go." Her eyes blurred with tears she dared not shed. In that instant, she knew. The mansion had no room for her voice, no space for her truth. She was standing trial already, condemned before she could explain. The millionaire's voice roared again, final and unyielding. "Step away from my children, Maya, or pack your bags. Tonight." The chandelier lights flickered, casting long shadows over the marble floor. The twins buried their faces into Maya's apron, clutching her as though letting go would mean losing the only safe rhythm they had ever known. Her heart raced. How could something so pure, so fragile, be twisted into cruelty by the very man who should have protected it? Yet behind the children's frightened silence lay a truth that no insult could erase. Because long before that night in the ballroom, Maya had found a way to reach the twins in a world where their own parents could not. It had begun quietly, almost accidentally in the dimly lit kitchen. While other servants whispered gossip and hurried through chores, Maya stayed behind with the children. She would spread a piece of chalk across the black and white tiles, drawing simple shapes, circles, squares, wavy lines. The twins would crouch beside her, their little fingers tracing the drawings with eager eyes. One evening, as she wiped flour from the counter, a thought struck her. She tapped the floor with a wooden spoon. Tap, tap. The twins froze. Their small feet shifted. Curious. She tapped again, steady this time. Tap, tap, tap. Their bodies swayed slightly, almost unconsciously, as though they could feel rhythm through the vibrations of the tiles. Maya's heart leapt. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, though she knew they couldn't hear. She placed their palms flat on the counter, then tapped again. This time their eyes widened. They felt it. From then on, every spare moment became a secret lesson. Maya used the most ordinary objects, candy wrappers crinkling between her fingers, the slam of a cupboard door, the hum of her own footsteps, to teach rhythm. The twins began to laugh silently, their shoulders shaking, eyes sparkling. They could not hear the world, but with Maya, they could feel it. The candies became more than sweets. They were rewards, tokens of courage. Every time one of the twins managed to mimic a rhythm, Maya slipped a small candy into their hand. They didn't just taste sugar, they tasted victory. At night, when the mansion grew cold and silent, Maya sometimes sat alone in her small servant's room, replaying the moments in her mind. She wasn't their teacher by title, nor their mother by blood, but in those fragile victories, she felt she was something far greater, a bridge no wealth could buy. The cruel words of their father still echoed in her chest, heavy and bruising, but she knew the truth of those evenings. The dance was never mockery. It was survival. It was hope. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the tall kitchen windows, the twins toddled over with chalk clutched in their small fists. They drew uneven lines on the floor and pointed for Maya to join. She crouched down, and together, they built rhythms out of shapes: a square for 4 taps, a triangle for 3, a circle for endless spinning. When one of the boys stumbled and fell, he frowned, lips trembling. Maya reached for him, kissed his forehead gently, and tapped the chalk square again. His frown melted into silent laughter, his eyes shining with determination. To anyone else, it was nonsense: chalk marks, candy, and stomps on a kitchen floor. But to Maya and the children, it was a secret language, a language beyond sound. She often wondered if their parents would ever see it. Would they ever understand that these children, mocked by silence, carried music inside them, that they only needed someone willing to listen differently? But those thoughts always ended in the same answer: no, not yet. The mansion's walls were built not just of stone, but of pride and coldness. Love did not echo here. Maya carried that truth like a weight, but she also carried the children's trust, light and fragile as a feather. The father's rage had cast a long shadow, but Maya's quiet bond with the twins glowed stronger in secret, because even in silence, the children had found their song, and she was determined to keep dancing with them until the world finally understood. The kitchen became their sanctuary. It was the only place in the entire mansion where laughter, though soundless, truly lived. Every morning, while the other maids scurried to polish silverware and dust chandeliers, Maya spread old flashcards across the wooden kitchen table. The cards were worn, their edges frayed, but they were treasures in her hands. She had found them discarded in the attic. Faded words printed in bold letters, once used by some forgotten tutor. She pointed to one card, her finger tracing the letters slowly. Apple. The twins leaned forward, eyes curious. Maya held up a real apple from the counter, shiny and red. She placed it beside the card, then touched it gently to each child's hand. The boy giggled without sound, lips pulling into a wide smile. The girl clapped softly, her palms barely making noise but her face glowing with delight. Maya whispered anyway, even though they couldn't hear. Apple. Her voice was for them, but also for herself, as if saying it aloud could weave invisible threads between her world and theirs. Soon the kitchen was filled with small games. Maya would shuffle the cards like a magician, hiding one behind her back, then reveal it with dramatic flair. The twins leaned closer each time, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Their smiles, wide and unguarded, were her greatest reward. But her teaching didn't stop with words. She wanted them to feel confidence, to stand taller in a world that often treated them as fragile. So she built lessons out of ordinary things. Pots became drums. Flour dusted across the table became drawing. Sand where they traced letters. Even spoons became wands, leading invisible orchestras only the 3 of them could see. One afternoon, Maya placed a candy in the middle of the table. She pointed to the card, good, then gestured at the candy. The twins understood. They straightened their backs, mimicked the letters on the card with their fingers, and when they got it right, Maya slid the candy into their palms. The boy's smile was radiant. The girl pressed the candy to her lips before even eating it, as though it was not sugar, but a promise. Those candies became currency, not of bribery, but of courage. Every success, every step forward, was sweetened with a tiny piece of proof that they were capable, that they mattered. Yet Maya knew how fragile their joy was. Whenever footsteps echoed outside the kitchen door, the twins would freeze, their little bodies stiff with fear. They had learned, far too young, that discovery often brought punishment. Maya soothed them by placing a finger on her lips, then pressing her hand to her heart. A silent vow, "I'm here, you're safe," and the twins would relax again, their faces softening into the quiet trust only children can give. One evening, when shadows stretched long across the marble floor, Maya finished her chores later than usual. The twins tiptoed into the kitchen, their pajamas wrinkled, their eyes wide with mischief. They carried their chalk and tugged at her apron, begging for another lesson. Maya sighed, pretending to scold them. "It's late, you little night owls," she whispered, shaking her head. But she couldn't resist. She drew a heart on the floor with the chalk, then placed their hands inside it. The twins looked up at her, eyes shining. The boy tapped his chest, then pointed at Maya. The girl copied him. It wasn't the exact sign for love. They didn't know it yet, but Maya understood. Tears pricked her eyes as she hugged them both tightly, her heart aching with tenderness. If only their father could see this. If only he could see that his children were not broken, not shameful, not a burden. They were blooming. And all it took was someone willing to listen differently. But in the mansion's halls, such truths were dangerous. One wrong glance, one whispered word, could destroy everything. So Maya carried their secret carefully, guarding it like a flame against the cold wind of judgment. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the flame would soon be seen. Because secrets, no matter how tender, rarely stay hidden in houses built on pride. It happened one quiet evening, when the house was unusually still. The other servants had retired early, and the millionaire and his wife were away at a late dinner. The twins padded into the kitchen, dragging their toy blocks across the floor, their eyes glittering with the mischievous energy Maya had come to love. She smiled. "What are you two up to now?" she whispered, though she knew her words were only half understood. The boy tapped his sister's shoulder, then clapped his hands against the wooden counter. A steady beat. She followed, stamping her little feet against the tiles. Maya froze, watching them. They weren't asking for flashcards or candies tonight. They wanted something else. Rhythm, movement. Her chest tightened with warmth. Slowly, she stood, smoothing her apron, and tapped her foot in answer. Step, step, pause. The twins' eyes lit up. They copied her, wobbling at first, but then finding their balance. Their laughter was silent, but their joy filled the air. Maya took the boy's hand, then the girl's, guiding them into a simple circle. Her feet moved slowly, her skirt swishing softly against the floor. The children followed, stumbling, then recovering, their bodies swaying in unison with hers. For the first time, it wasn't just practice, it was dance. The moment felt sacred, like a song only they could hear. The twins spun clumsily, bumping into each other, and then burst into soundless giggles. Maya's heart swelled so much it hurt. "Look at you," she whispered, her voice trembling with pride. "You're dancing. You're really dancing." "Yisayat." Boy's small hands clapped again, out of rhythm but full of life. The girl stomped her feet, then twirled on tiptoe, mimicking Maya's earlier movements. They moved not with music, but with courage, with the beat of their own hearts. When the boy stumbled and nearly fell, Maya caught him, steadying his tiny frame. He looked up at her with eyes so full of trust it nearly broke her. In that moment, she realized, this wasn't just play, this was proof. Proof that the twins could learn, grow, thrive, even if the world had chosen silence for them. Tears blurred Maya's vision. She blinked them away quickly, because the children didn't need to see her cry. They needed to see her strong, smiling, believing in them more fiercely than anyone ever had. For the next half hour, the kitchen turned into a secret ballroom. The worn tiles became a stage, the dim yellow light overhead their spotlight. Maya spun, the twins spun after her. She clapped a beat, they stomped to follow. At times they stumbled, at times they froze, but always, they got back up. And each time they did, Maya's soul burned brighter. At last, when their small bodies grew tired, the twins collapsed onto the floor, panting with laughter only she could read in their eyes. Maya knelt beside them, brushing sweat-damp hair from their foreheads. She pressed a candy into each of their hands, whispering, "Brave dancers deserve sweet rewards." The girl hugged her. The boy rested his head against her arm. They were exhausted, but content, glowing with the triumph of their first dance. Maya sat there with them, her back against the cool kitchen wall, and let herself breathe. She had given them something more than rhythm. She had given them proof that silence could not steal joy. But even as the sweetness of victory filled her chest, a shadow lingered at the edge of her mind. The mansion was a place of eyes and ears, where kindness was easily twisted into suspicion. And though tonight's dance was hidden, Maya feared the day it would no longer be their secret, because triumph in shadows rarely stayed hidden for long. The very next afternoon, Maya was scrubbing dishes in the kitchen when she heard a soft scrape along the marble floor. She turned, and her breath caught. The twins were dragging something heavy between them. A battered, dust-covered toy piano, its wooden legs chipped, its keys yellowed with age. They heaved it across the threshold, their small arms straining, determination written across their little faces. Maya rushed to help. "Careful, you'll hurt yourselves," she whispered, wiping her damp hands on her apron as she steadied the piano. But the children shook their heads fiercely, refusing her help until they had pushed it right to the center of the kitchen. Finally, they looked up at her, panting, their eyes shining with pride. Maya knelt, brushing the dust away. "Where did you even find this?" she murmured. She had her answer when the boy pointed toward the attic stairs. Of course, forgotten toys, discarded relics. The girl pressed a tiny hand on the keys. A dull clunk echoed. The strings inside rusted beyond tune. No melody came. No sweet notes filled the air. Only hollow vibration. Yet the twins didn't seem disappointed. Instead, their faces lit with wonder. They pressed the keys again and again, then placed their palms flat on the wooden frame, closing their eyes as if listening. Maya realized in a rush, they weren't searching for sound. They were feeling the vibrations. Her throat tightened. "You clever children," she whispered, eyes stinging with sudden tears. The boy tapped a key, looked at Maya, then stomped his foot. The same rhythm they had practiced the night before. His sister joined, pressing another key and spinning. Slowly, her body swaying in time. Maya gasped softly. They were building a dance with the piano, not through music, but through movement. Each vibration was a beat, each press of a key a step. She clapped her hands lightly, adding rhythm to their game. The twins followed, giggling in silence, their faces glowing as though the broken piano had given them the world. For the next hour, the kitchen transformed into something magical. The toy piano clattered with dull notes, the children's feet tapped against the tiles, and Maya guided them in their little circle. To anyone else, it was noise and nonsense. To Maya and the children, it was a concert. The girl pressed her cheek against the piano lid, her eyes dreamy. The boy hugged Maya's waist, looking up at her with silent words she could still read. "Thank you." She swallowed hard. How could she explain to their father, to anyone, what this meant? That these children were not broken. They were inventive. They were learning to feel music in ways the hearing world could never imagine. Later that night, after tucking the twins back into their beds, Maya lingered by the piano. She sat on the floor beside it, running her hand across its chipped keys. Her reflection stared back faintly in the dull ivory. She wasn't their teacher by profession, nor their family by blood. And yet, somehow, she was their bridge. Every candy, every flashcard, every chalk mark, and now this broken piano. Each one was a step across the impossible gap. She closed her eyes and pressed a single key. The vibration hummed through her palm. She imagined the children's smiles, their laughter without sound, their small feet learning to trust the rhythm of the world. Her heart ached with both joy and dread. For in this mansion, every small joy carried a shadow of risk. Still, she whispered to the empty kitchen, one day, the world will see you dance, and they will finally understand." The words dissolved into the silence. but in her chest they burned like a vow. Yet joy carried risks when eyes of envy began to watch. It was a late evening when the storm finally broke. The mansion stood silent under the weight of dusk. Servants had withdrawn to their corners, shadows stretched long across the marble floors, and the kitchen was alive once again with secret laughter. The twins had begged for another dance. They pressed the piano keys in uneven rhythm, thump, clunk, clunk, while Maya guided their steps in the circle they loved so much. Their little feet tapped against the tiles, their bodies swaying. With pride, Maya clapped softly, encouraging them. "That's it. Step, step, spin. Look at you, my brave ones." Her words were only half understood, but her love was fully felt. The twins beamed, stumbling into her arms as they twirled. She hugged them close, pressing candies into their hands. Their eyes shone brighter than the chandeliers ever had. But in that very moment of joy, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Maya froze. The children stiffened. The piano's last dull note still vibrated when the door swung open with a violent crash. The millionaire stood there, his face twisted with fury. His expensive shoes clicked against the tiles as he stepped inside, his voice slicing through the room. "What is this circus?" The twins jumped, clutching Maya's apron in terror. They couldn't hear his words, but they saw the thunder on his face. Maya rose slowly, her heart pounding. "Sir, please!" "Enough!" he barked, his finger stabbing the air like a weapon. "I warned you once, and yet here you are, mocking my children again. Dancing like fools, banging on broken toys, turning my mansion into a madhouse." The boy hid behind Maya's leg. The girl clutched her hand tightly, eyes brimming with silent tears. Maya shook her head desperately. "It's not mockery, sir. They're learning. They feel the rhythm." "Rhythm?" The millionaire's laugh was cruel, hollow. "They're deaf, Maya. Do you not understand that? They don't need rhythm. They need discipline, structure, education, not this peasant show you parade around my kitchen." The words hit her like blows. Peasant, show, mockery. Her throat tightened. "I would never shame them. They trust me. They trust you too much," he cut in, his voice rising. "You are a maid, a servant, nothing more. Yet here you are, making them cling to you as if you are important." Maya flinched. But her resolve didn't break. She crouched beside the twins, signing clumsily with her hands, trying to calm them. "It's okay. I'm here. Don't be afraid." The millionaire's face reddened. "Stop that nonsense." He strode forward, yanking the flashcards from the table and scattering them across the floor. "This ends tonight. Do you hear me?" Children's eyes widened in panic as their fragile bridge of trust shattered into pieces on the cold tiles. The boy bent down, scrambling to gather the fallen cards, his hands shaking. The girl held tighter to Maya, refusing to let go. The father's voice thundered again. "Step away from them. Now!" Maya stood her ground, trembling but unyielding. "If I step away now, sir, you'll lose them. They are finding their voice, even if it isn't the one you expected. Please. Look at them. Look at what they've built." The millionaire's jaw clenched. He grabbed the boy by the arm and pulled him close. The child's silent cry tore through Maya's chest like glass. "Father, stop!" Maya cried without thinking, the word father slipping out, not of kinship, but of desperation. "You're scaring them," the man's eyes flared. "How dare you raise your voice in my house?" The wife appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes swept the room, the scattered cards, the broken piano, the children's frightened faces. Her lips tightened. "What is going on?" she demanded coldly. The millionaire turned, pointing an accusing finger at Maya. "She's corrupting them, filling their heads with useless tricks, teaching them to dance like street performers. This woman is poisoning our children's future." The wife's gaze fixed on Maya, hard and unforgiving. "Is this true?" Maya's hands trembled. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "No, madam, I am only helping them find courage. I swear." "Enough!" The wife's voice was like ice. "Pack your things, Maya. You are finished here." The twins erupted, their silent wails louder than any scream. They clung to Maya desperately, their little bodies shaking as tears streamed down their cheeks. They signed wildly with their hands, begging her not to leave. Maya's own tears fell freely now. She wrapped her arms around them, whispering fiercely, "I will never leave you. I promise." The millionaire's face hardened. "You're done, and if you don't step out by tomorrow morning, I'll have you thrown out." He stormed out, leaving only the echo of his rage behind. The wife followed, her silk gown sweeping across the fallen flashcards like a final judgment. The children sobbed silently, their bodies pressed into Maya's chest. She held them tight, rocking them gently, whispering words they couldn't hear but would always feel. "You are not broken. You are not shame. You are my brave ones." But in the pit of her stomach, fear coiled tighter. The storm had broken. The house would never be the same again. His words did not echo alone. Whispers in the mansion spread like poison. By the next morning, the household staff was buzzing. Servants huddled in corners, their voices hushed but sharp, every sentence laced with malice. Maya could feel their eyes trailing her every step, their gazes heavy with judgment. "She thinks she's better than the rest of us," one maid muttered as Maya passed with a tray of breakfast dishes, clinging to the children like she's some kind of saint. Another scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. "Saint? More like schemer. You heard what Master said. She's corrupting them. Mark my words. She's just using those poor deaf twins to get close to the family." Maya's chest tightened. She kept her head down, clutching the tray tighter, willing herself not to cry in front of them. In the laundry room, the whispers grew uglier. "Do you know what I heard? The twins refuse their own mother's touch now. They only cling to her. That's not love. That's manipulation. She's poisoning them," another voice added. "It's dangerous. If she stays, those children will forget their place, forget who they are." Every word felt like a dagger. Maya wanted to shout, to defend herself, to tell them the truth. But she knew it wouldn't matter. In the mansion, truth was fragile. Lies were louder. At dinner service, she noticed how the butler, once polite, now avoided her gaze. How the cook muttered curses under her breath as Maya entered the kitchen. Even the younger maids, who once admired her patience with the children, now looked at her with suspicion, as though she carried a disease. The children, sensing the shift, grew more clingy. They followed Maya everywhere, tugging at her apron, refusing to let her out of sight. Their silent presence only fueled the gossip further. "See? They won't even look at their parents now," one servant whispered loudly enough for Maya to hear. "She's turning them against their own family." That night, Maya sat alone in her small servant's room, staring at the faded wallpaper. Her hands trembled in her lap. She had never felt so isolated, so hated, in all her years of work. The mansion that had once echoed with secret dances now pulsed with suspicion and cruelty. But when the twins crept into her room, their little arms wrapping around her waist, Maya broke down. She hugged them fiercely, pressing her cheek against their hair. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered, tears spilling. "No matter what they say, no matter what they think, you are mine to protect." The children signed clumsily with their hands, their gestures shaky but clear. "Don't go." Maya nodded, her heart breaking. "I won't." Yet in the back of her mind, fear gnawed. The poison spreading through the mansion was not just whispers. It was building into something more dangerous. And the cruelest misunderstanding came not from servants, but from the heart of the family itself. The wife had always been distant, with her children. Guilt gnawed at her in ways she rarely admitted. Guilt for not spending enough time. Guilt for not knowing how to communicate with them. Guilt for leaving their care to nannies and tutors while she floated through banquets and luncheons. But when she saw the twins clinging to Maya, laughing in silence at her games, jealousy burned sharper than guilt ever had. It began subtly, a glance held too long in the hallway, a clipped tone whenever Maya entered a room. Then came the questions. "Why?" "Are they always with you, Maya?" the wife asked one morning, her voice sweet but her eyes cold. She stood in the nursery doorway, arms folded, watching as Maya helped the twins arrange flashcards on the floor. Maya's throat tightened. They feel safe with me, madam. It helps them focus." "Safe?" The word dripped with bitterness. "Are you implying they're not safe with their own mother?" Maya's lips parted, panic flickering in her chest. "No, madam. Of course not. I only meant, then perhaps you should remember your place." The wife turned sharply, her silk gown whispering against the floor, and left without another word. The twins looked up at Maya, confusion in their eyes. She forced a smile, hiding the storm building inside her, but the encounters grew sharper. At dinner, the wife tried to feed the twins, only for them to push her hands away and reach for Maya. Instead, the wife's face hardened, her jaw clenched as she set the spoon down with a sharp clink. "Do you see this?" she hissed at her husband later that night. "They reject me, their own mother, because of her." The millionaire sighed, exhausted from the day's outrage. "Their children, they cling to whoever spoils them. Don't you dare excuse this," she snapped. "She's overstepping. She's trying to replace me." The husband looked at her, torn between irritation and fatigue. "She's a maid, nothing more. Don't let her get under your skin." But the wife's suspicion only deepened. Every giggle she saw, every flash of joy, felt like an insult carved into her heart. In her mind, Maya wasn't just teaching. She was stealing affection that should have belonged to a mother. One afternoon, the wife confronted Maya directly. The twins were playing with chalk in the kitchen when the wife entered, her heels clicking sharply on the tiles. "Leave us," she ordered coldly. Maya froze. "Madam, they're in the middle of—" "Did you not hear me?" Her eyes narrowed. "Leave us." Maya lowered her gaze and obeyed, stepping back as the wife crouched beside the children. She tried to mimic Maya's gestures, tapping the chalk, drawing shapes, but the twins frowned, frustrated, shaking their heads. Their little hands moved in clumsy signs. "Maya, Maya." The wife's chest constricted with rage. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not her, me. I am your mother." But the twins only pushed the chalk toward the door where Maya had slipped out. Their silent rejection cut deeper than any blade. That night, the wife found Maya polishing silver in the dining hall. Her voice was icy as she said, "Listen carefully. You are not their mother. You are not their teacher. You are a maid. Do not forget that." Maya's eyes welled, but she bowed her head. "Yes, madam." The wife leaned closer, her whisper sharp as glass. "If I ever feel you are replacing me again, you won't just lose your job. You'll lose everything." Maya's breath caught. Fear twisted in her stomach, but she remained silent. The wife swept away, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. For days after, Maya walked on eggshells. She still taught the children, still danced with them when no one was watching. But the weight of the wife's warning pressed heavily on her chest. The twins noticed. They tugged at her hands more often, their eyes filled with worry. They didn't understand the words spoken around them, but they felt the tension in every room. The cold stares, the clipped tones. At night, when Maya tucked them into bed, the girl touched her cheek, frowning, as if asking, "Why are you sad?" Maya kissed her forehead, forcing a smile. "I'm not sad, little one. I'm here. Always here." But inside, fear grew. The children's joy, once fragile, now stood at risk of being ripped away entirely. Pressure mounted, and soon, outsiders were called in to measure Maya's worth. It began with a knock at the mansion gates. A polished black car arrived, and out stepped a stern-looking man in a crisp gray suit, briefcase in hand, glasses perched neatly on the bridge of his nose. His name was announced simply as Mr. Collins, child development consultant. The Millionaire had summoned him. That afternoon, the atmosphere in the mansion shifted. The staff scurried nervously, whispers following the consultant through the hallways. Maya watched from a distance as he shook hands with the master and mistress of the house, his expression unreadable. Soon, Maya was called into the study. The air smelled of leather and old books. The millionaire sat behind his desk, the wife perched elegantly at his side. Mr. Collins adjusted his glasses and looked at Maya as though she were a subject in an experiment. "I've been asked to evaluate the children's progress," he said flatly. "And your role in it." Maya's throat tightened. She clasped her hands together to stop them from shaking. "Sir, I only try to help them. They are learning in ways—" "That's precisely the concern," Mr. Collins interrupted. He pulled out a notepad. "I need to observe the methods you've been using. The family is worried about dependency, unorthodox practices, and lack of professional structure." The wife's lips curled into a faint smirk. The word stung. Unorthodox, dependency. lack of structure. Maya lowered her gaze. Yes, sir. The next day, the evaluation began. In the nursery, Maya knelt with the twins, arranging flashcards as usual. She tapped the card Apple, holding up the fruit with a gentle smile. The children responded eagerly, mimicking the letters with their tiny fingers. Pride shone in their faces. But when she glanced up, Mr. Collins was scribbling furiously on his notepad. Later, she tapped rhythms on the toy piano, guiding the twins into their clumsy but joyful dance. They laughed silently, their eyes glowing. To Maya, it was magic. To Mr. Collins, it was noise. Unstructured play. He muttered under his breath, writing again. No standardized curriculum. Reinforces emotional dependency on the caregiver, rather than independence. Each note cut deeper into Maya's chest. At lunch, the twins refused to eat unless Maya was present. She sat beside them, coaxing them with small gestures, slipping them candies as reward. They leaned against her happily, their trust evident. But the consultant frowned. They show alarming attachment. Reliance on a single individual is unhealthy. This may damage long-term social development. Maya bit her lip, swallowing the tears rising in her throat. By the third day, the mansion buzzed with tension. The consultant met privately with the millionaire and his wife in the study. Maya passed the doorway and overheard fragments of their conversation. Methods are sentimental, not educational. Emotional crutch. Stunts real progress. Recommend immediate change of caregiver. Maya's heart pounded. She pressed her back against the wall, clutching her apron, her breath shallow. They were planning to remove her. That evening, the millionaire confronted her in the hallway. His voice was cold, final. You've crossed the line, Maya. Mr. Collins' report is clear. You are not trained. You are not qualified. And worst of all, you've made my children dependent on you. This is not love. This is weakness. Maya's lips trembled. No, sir, it's strength. They are stronger now than ever before. Can't you see it? They dance, they laugh, they cling to you. He cut in sharply. And when you're gone, they will collapse. That is not growth. That is failure. The wife stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with quiet victory. You will leave, Maya. It is decided. The twins appeared at the end of the corridor, their small faces pale with fear. They ran to Maya, clinging to her skirt, signing frantically with their hands. Don't go. Stay. Maya knelt, tears spilling. She hugged them tightly. I won't leave you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Not now, not ever. But even as she said the words, dread twisted in her stomach. For in this house, decisions were not made by love, but by power. And the children's loyalty could not be measured by charts. And soon, the fight moved beyond mansion walls. It began with a sealed envelope. The butler delivered it to Maya. One evening, his eyes avoiding hers, his tone clipped. This came for you. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was a summons, an official notice from the court. She was accused of negligence, of overstepping professional boundaries, even of stunting the children's development through unqualified methods. Maya's breath caught. The words blurred through her tears. She sank into a chair, clutching the paper to her chest. The walls of the mansion seemed to close in, colder and crueler than ever. When she finally found the courage to step outside the nursery, the millionaire was waiting at the foot of the staircase. His expression was stone, his voice sharp as a blade. You will answer before the court, Maya, he said flatly. This has gone far enough. My children's future will not be ruined by your sentimentality. Maya's heart pounded. Sir, please, you've seen them. You've seen how they've grown. How can you call that ruin? His jaw tightened. What I've seen is a servant forgetting her place. You made them depend on you instead of real structure. That ends now. The twins had been listening from the top of the staircase. Their little faces crumpled as they saw Maya's tears. They rushed down, clutching her hands desperately, their small fingers moving quickly in the signs they had created. Don't leave. Don't go. The millionaire's eyes darkened. Enough of this nonsense, he roared. He tore the summons from her trembling hands, waving it like proof of her guilt. Tomorrow you will stand before a judge, and when this is done, you will never see them again. The words struck harder than any blow. The day of the hearing arrived. The courthouse loomed tall and cold, its marble pillars casting long shadows. Maya walked inside with her head bowed, the paper summons clutched tightly in her hand. She wore her plain maid's dress, freshly ironed, though the fabric showed years of wear. Every step echoed her fear. Inside the courtroom, rows of strangers turned to look at her. The millionaire sat proudly at the front, his wife at his side, both dressed in expensive suits. Their lawyer shuffled papers with smug confidence. Maya sat alone at the defendant's table, her palms damp, her heart thudding painfully against her ribs. She wanted to shrink into herself, but she couldn't. Not when the twins were brought in by a nanny, their eyes searching desperately for her. They waved their hands in frantic signs, trying to reach her across the room. Maya pressed her hand to her heart, then pointed to them, mouthing silently, "I'm here." The judge entered, his gavel striking once. The trial began. The millionaire's lawyer stood tall, his voice booming. "Your Honor, we are here to address the dangerous actions of a maid who has manipulated two vulnerable children. Instead of following structured professional methods, she subjected them to games, dances, and unqualified practices that risk long-term harm." He gestured to Maya with disdain. "This woman is no teacher. She is a servant who sought to make herself indispensable by fostering unhealthy emotional dependency." The words stung. Maya bit her lip, tears welling, but she forced herself to stay composed. Witnesses were called. The butler spoke of her overfamiliarity. The cook claimed Maya had ignored her duties to spend time with the children. Even the consultant, Mr. Collins, took the stand, presenting charts and graphs that painted Maya's methods as reckless and sentimental. Each testimony drove the knife deeper. By the time it was her turn to speak, Maya's hands shook so violently she could barely stand. The judge's eyes fixed on her. "Maya William, do you have a defense?" She swallowed hard, her voice trembling but resolute. "Yes, Your Honor. I have no certificates, no training. That is true. But what I have given those children is love. They are not weak because of me. They are stronger. They can dance, they can laugh, they can trust. Before me, they had silence. Now, they have courage." She turned, looking directly at the millionaire. Her tears spilled freely. "You call it dependency. I call it hope. I never mocked them. I never shamed them. I only wanted them to believe they are not broken," the courtroom murmured. The lawyer sneered. "Touching words, Your Honor, but irrelevant. Love is not education. Love is not training." The judge raised his hand for silence. Maya sank back into her seat, her body trembling, her heart heavy. From the corner of her eye, she saw the twins. They were clutching small candies in their hands, the very ones she had given them in secret lessons. They pressed them tightly, as though holding on to her promise. And in that moment, Maya knew. The trial was no longer about her. It was about them. Yet the silence of children carried a power no lawyer could silence. The courtroom had grown tense, the air thick with judgment. Papers shuffled, whispers passed between rows of onlookers. But at the center of it all sat Maya, trembling, her hands folded tightly, her head bowed in prayer no one could hear. The millionaire leaned back smugly in his chair, certain the case was won. His wife's lips curled with quiet satisfaction. The lawyer adjusted his tie, already preparing for the final strike that would end Maya's place in the mansion forever. But then, a small sound broke through the stillness. Thump. The boy had risen from his seat. He wasn't supposed to move, yet his tiny shoes tapped against the polished floor with deliberate rhythm. His sister followed, slipping from the nanny's grasp. They walked hand in hand, candies clenched tightly in their fists, straight to the center of the courtroom. Gasps filled the gallery. The judge raised an eyebrow. "What is this?" The millionaire leapt to his feet. "Sit down immediately, do you hear me? Sit down." But of course they didn't hear. Instead, the boy stomped once more, thump, thump, and looked straight at Maya. His little hands gestured wildly in the air, the signs only she could read. "Dance. Show them." Maya's breath caught. Tears blurred her vision. The girl pressed a piano key she had carried with her, a chipped one they had torn from the broken toy before leaving the mansion. She slammed it against the wooden table, and though the sound was faint, the vibration echoed in their palms. She smiled, turning to her brother. Together, they began to move. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. The twins spun clumsily, their arms stretched wide, their feet tapping the rhythm Maya had once taught them in the kitchen. They clapped against the table, stomped their feet, spun in circles, their eyes glowing with pride, and then, with a courage that broke every barrier, they turned to the judge. They mimicked Maya's movements. The same steps, the same rhythm, the same fragile dance that had once been condemned as mockery, only now it was undeniable. The courtroom could see it. These were not broken children. They were alive. They were learning. They were filled with joy. Maya covered her mouth, sobbing silently, her body trembling with both pride and grief. The millionaire's face turned pale. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Stop this nonsense! This is not proof of anything." But his words were drowned by the sight before everyone's eyes. The judge leaned forward, his stern face softening. "Quiet," he commanded. "Let them finish." The twins clasped hands again, spinning each other in a circle. Their laughter was soundless, but it radiated across the room, filling it with a kind of music no one had ever heard before. At the end of the dance, they ran to Maya, wrapping their little arms around her waist. They pressed the candies into Tiu, her hands signing desperately with their tiny fingers. Teacher, safe, love. The entire courtroom gasped. The lawyer stuttered, "Your Honor, this is a performance, nothing more." But the judge silenced him with a raised hand. His eyes softened as he looked at Maya. "Miss William," he said slowly, "it seems clear to this court that these children have not been mocked, but rather guided. Whatever methods you have used, they have given these children confidence, connection, and joy. That cannot be ignored." Maya sobbed, nodding, her tears falling freely onto the children's hair. She hugged them tighter, whispering, "You are my brave ones, you showed them." The millionaire tried one last time, his voice rising in desperation. "This is manipulation. She's turned them against us." But the wife's face had changed. She sat frozen, her eyes locked on her children. The same children who had never once looked at her with such joy. For the first time, guilt and shame cracked her mask. Her lips trembled, though no words came. The judge struck his gavel once. "Enough. This case is dismissed. Maya William is cleared of all accusations." The sound echoed like thunder, but this time it was not judgment. It was freedom. The twins clung to Maya, their little hands trembling as they signed again and again. "Stay. Don't leave. Always." Maya held them close, her heart breaking open with relief. She looked around the courtroom, her voice trembling but firm. "They are not broken. They are not weak. They are dancing, and nothing you say can take that away." Tears filled the eyes of strangers in the gallery. Even the judge's voice faltered as he adjourned the session. The nanny wept softly in the back row, and for the first time, the millionaire had no words. His wealth, his pride, his power, none of it could silence the truth his children had spoken with their feet. The gavel struck again. Justice echoed louder than wealth. But when the courtroom doors closed and the family returned to the mansion, silence filled the halls. Not the tender silence Maya had built with the children, but a heavy, suffocating one. The millionaire walked ahead, his shoulders rigid, his pride shattered. His expensive shoes clicked angrily on the marble, each step a reminder that wealth could not command respect in a courtroom. Behind him, his wife moved slowly, her face pale, her eyes glassy with something Maya had never seen in her before. Shame. And then there were the twins, clinging tightly to Maya's hands as though letting go would mean losing her again. Their little eyes glimmered with triumph, but beneath it was fear. Fear that the fragile victory might be taken away at any moment. That night at dinner, the fracture became visible. The long dining table stretched between them like a battlefield. The millionaire sat at one end, his knife scraping harshly against the plate. His wife sat across from him, silent, her hands folded neatly but her gaze fixed downward. Maya stood behind the twins, guiding them gently as they ate, her presence undeniable. The children refused to lift their spoons without her touch, refused to chew until she nodded. Their bond was too deep to be hidden now. Finally, the millionaire slammed his fist onto the table. The silverware rattled violently. "This is unbearable," he growled. His voice trembled with rage. In my own house, my own children look at me like a stranger, while they worship her. The wife flinched but didn't defend him. Instead, she whispered softly, "Maybe it's not her fault." The words shocked the room. For weeks, she had been Maya's harshest critic, but now her tone carried exhaustion, even regret. The millionaire glared at her. "Not her fault? Have you forgotten what we saw? She paraded them in court. Made fools of us in front of the city." "She didn't," the wife cut in, her voice sharper now. "They chose her. Our children chose her." Silence followed. Even Maya's heart froze at the admission. The millionaire's face flushed red. He turned away, stabbing his food with unnecessary force. "Enough! I don't want to hear it." The children had gone still, their eyes darting between their parents. They didn't understand the words, but they felt the tension, the coldness, slicing the air. The boy leaned into Maya. The girl reached for her apron. Their small gestures screamed what they couldn't say. "Protect us." That night, the family splintered further. The husband retreated to his study, pouring glass after glass of expensive whiskey, drowning his humiliation. The wife sat in the nursery, watching her children sleep, her eyes wet with tears. She touched their hair gently, whispering, "I should have been the one, not her." Maya, in her small servants' quarters, sat awake long into the night. She held the candies the children had pressed into her hand in court, her fingers trembling. She had won her innocence, but victory had cost more than she imagined. The mansion was no longer just hostile. It was broken, divided. In the days that followed, the fracture grew. Servants whispered even more, now torn between pity and suspicion. The millionaire avoided the nursery altogether, too ashamed to face the children's trust in Maya. The wife grew quieter, her sharp edges dulled by guilt. Through it all, Maya remained steady for the twins. She taught them, comforted them, danced with them when no one was watching. But in her heart, she carried a truth heavier than any court judgment. Justice had not healed this family. It had only exposed the cracks. Yet recognition soon came from a place none expected. A week after the trial, a letter arrived at the mansion. It bore the seal of the city's prestigious Academy for Inclusive Education. The envelope was handed to the millionaire by the butler, but curiosity made the wife lean in first. She slid it open carefully, her eyes scanning the words. Her lips parted in surprise. "It's about Maya," she whispered. The millionaire snatched the paper, his eyes narrowing as he read aloud. "We have followed the recent court proceedings and were deeply moved by the testimony of the children. Their display of rhythm and expression was remarkable. We believe this achievement is not merely spontaneous, but guided. We invite Miss Maya William to visit our institution and share her methods with our faculty. We would be honored to see her approach with the children in a structured environment." Silence fell in the room. The millionaire's face flushed with anger. "This is absurd. A maid, invited to a school as if she were a teacher?" But the wife's expression softened. She read the letter again, slowly, her voice trembling. They're recognizing her. They're calling what she did teaching. For the first time, the word didn't sound like an insult. Maya stood frozen near the doorway, summoned by the butler when the letter had arrived. Her hands twisted in, her apron as the words sank in. A school, an invitation, not mockery, not dismissal, recognition. Her eyes brimmed with tears. They want me?" she whispered. The millionaire crushed the paper in his fist. "This is a mistake. You will decline." But before Maya could respond, the twins darted into the room. The boy tugged at her apron. The girl snatched the crumpled letter from their father's hand. They pressed it into Maya's palms, their little eyes glowing with determination. Their hands moved quickly in signs. Go. Show. Proud. Maya's throat closed. She sank to her knees, hugging them tightly. For once, she let herself cry freely in front of everyone. The wife watched, silent, but shaken. Her gaze lingered on her children. The joy in their eyes, the pride that had never been there before. For the first time, she whispered, "Perhaps she should go." The millionaire spun toward her, his voice sharp. "You would allow this humiliation? Our maid paraded in front of strangers as if she gave them something we could not." the wife interrupted softly. The words hung heavy in the room. The millionaire's jaw clenched, but he had no reply. A week later, Maya walked into the academy. She wore her plainest dress, freshly laundered, her hair tied back neatly in a bun. Her hands trembled as she held the twins' hands, guiding them. Up the steps, the faculty greeted her warmly, their smiles genuine. They asked questions, eager to understand. How did you begin? What tools did you use? Maya's voice shook, but she answered honestly. I used what I had. Chalk, candies, old flashcards, even a broken piano. I only wanted them to feel the world differently, to know they weren't broken. She demonstrated with the twins. They tapped rhythms on the table, traced shapes in chalk, spun clumsily in their familiar dance. The faculty watched in awe, their eyes softening with admiration. When the demonstration ended, the room erupted in applause. The twins beamed, running into Maya's arms. For the first time, Maya wasn't a maid shamed for teaching. She was acknowledged, respected, valued. One of the teachers approached her. You have a gift, Miss William. What you did is more than service. It's education. If you're willing, we would like you to assist here, not as a servant, but as an aide. Maya's heart stuttered. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, Thank you. Back at the mansion, the shift was undeniable. The servants who once whispered poison now looked at her differently, some with shame, others with awe. The wife walked into the nursery one evening, watching as Maya tucked the twins into bed. Her voice was quiet, almost broken. They invited. You, she said softly. Not me. Not him. You. Maya hesitated, then replied gently, because they listened, and I listened back. The wife's eyes glistened, but she turned away, unable to speak further. For Maya, it was more than recognition. It was proof that her love wasn't a mistake, that her fight hadn't been in vain. For the first time, the world outside the mansion saw her not as a maid who overstepped, but as a woman who built bridges where no one else dared. The twins clung to her hands that night, their small fingers spelling out their newest sign, one they had invented together. Teacher. Maya wept into, their hair whispering, always. But change was not just professional. It touched the heart. Late one evening, the millionaire stood alone at the tall window of his study. Outside, the garden lamps flickered against the dark, their glow soft and distant. He swirled a glass of whiskey in his hand, but for once, he didn't drink. His eyes were fixed on the reflection in the glass, not of himself, but of the courtroom, the school, and most painfully, his children's faces when they had danced. For weeks, pride had been his shield. Pride in his wealth, pride in his control, pride in the image of a perfect family. But that shield now felt heavy, useless, because no matter how many times he told himself Maya was just a maid, he couldn't erase the truth he had seen with his own eyes. The children had found light in her presence, a light he had never given them. He remembered the boy's small hand pounding the courtroom floor in rhythm. He remembered the girl pressing the broken piano key to her chest. He remembered the way they looked at Maya, their eyes filled not with dependency, but with trust that gave them courage to face the world. And then came the thought that struck him hardest of all. They had never once looked at him that way. His grip tightened on the glass. A crack splintered across the surface, threatening to shatter. For years he had believed money could build everything his children needed: tutors, consultants, expensive schools. But he had built walls instead of bridges. Wealth had silenced their laughter. Maya had given it back. Why her? He whispered into the empty room. Why not me? The question tore at him, raw and unanswerable. His wife entered quietly, her silk gown trailing softly across the floor. She paused at the doorway, watching him, her face weary. For once, she didn't wear her usual mask of pride. Instead, her eyes glistened with the same truth. They chose her, she said softly, because she listened. The millionaire didn't turn. His throat ached. I gave them everything. No, the wife replied, her voice trembling. You bought them everything. That is not the same. Silence hung heavy between them. At last, he set the glass down on the windowsill. His shoulders sagged, the weight of his arrogance pressing him down. He whispered almost to himself, "I made them afraid of me." His wife's lips quivered. She nodded, unable to deny it. For the first time in years, the millionaire felt small. Smaller than the maid he had insulted. Smaller than the children he had failed to protect. His empire of wealth meant nothing in the face of two small hands that had signed love to someone else. He closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. It startled him. The first in decades. That night, he didn't enter the nursery. He stood instead at the doorway, watching quietly. Maya sat beside the twins' bed, stroking their hair as they drifted to sleep. She whispered softly, words they couldn't hear but always felt. "You are brave. You are loved. Always." The twins' faces relaxed in peace. Their little hands curled around hers. The millionaire's chest ached. He wanted to step in, to kneel, to say those words himself, but pride chained his feet to the floor. So he stood there silently, the truth gnawing at him. Wealth had built his mansion, but Maya's love had built his children. His silence admitted defeat, but life in the mansion did not end in courtrooms or study rooms. True change revealed itself quietly, not in declarations, but in the smallest of gestures. It was a Sunday evening when Maya returned from the academy. The day had been long, filled with teachers asking questions, praising her methods, and encouraging her to continue. But her heart longed only for the familiar rhythm of the kitchen and the small hands that always sought hers. She stepped inside, the smell of roasted bread and polished wood wrapping around her. The mansion was quiet, the kind of quiet that once felt suffocating, but now carried a different weight. It was expectant, as though waiting for something tender to unfold. When she entered the kitchen, the sight made her stop. On the center of the wooden table lay two small candies. Just two, wrapped carefully in crinkled paper, their colors bright under the soft glow of the lamp. The twins stood beside the table, their eyes shining, their faces lit with pride. They had placed the candies there themselves. Maya's throat tightened. Slowly she approached, her footsteps hesitant. She looked from the candies to the children, her eyes brimming with tears. The boy pointed to the candies, then tapped his chest, then pointed to her. The girl followed, signing clumsily. "For you." Maya's heart broke open. For months, she had given them candies, tiny tokens of courage, rewards for bravery. And now, they were giving them back, not as payment, not as dependence, but as love. Her knees buckled as she crouched beside them. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "My brave ones, you've turned my gift into your gift." The children giggled silently, wrapping their arms around her neck. Their little fingers signed the word they had invented just for her, teacher. Maya hugged them fiercely, pressing her cheek to their hair. She held the candies in her palms as though they were jewels, treasures greater than gold. Behind her, in the shadowed doorway, the millionaire stood. His eyes softened at the sight. He didn't interrupt, didn't command. For once, he simply watched. The wife appeared beside him, her face damp with silent tears. She reached for his hand, and for the first time in years, he didn't pull away. The children didn't notice their parents in the doorway. They were too busy laughing in silence, too busy clapping their hands in rhythm as Maya tapped her fingers against the table. The candies glowed under the lamplight, symbols of something stronger than pride or wealth. They weren't just sweets anymore. They were proof. Proof that bridges had been built, that silence had been turned into rhythm, that love could be returned. Maya sat with them late into the evening, their small hands in hers, the candies untouched but shining between them. The mansion, once heavy with suspicion, felt lighter now. The walls still carried shadows, but in the kitchen, there was warmth. No gavel struck. No grand announcement followed. Only this, a maid, two children, and two small candies on a table, and, in that quiet, love had rewritten legacy.